Hello, Elizabeth. Oh boy, we're going through a rough patch, aren't we? I bought a beer. I bought it last night. I was going to drink it, and it's warm now. Cheers. Warm beer reminds me of fishing for some reason. Fishing in South Africa. Where can I put it? It was not in the sun. Everything's in the sun here. Fuck. Amanda wrote and said, I guess I'm one of your friends who's not communicating well by email. And I said, no, you're the best friend I've got in real life, and it's true. She doesn't communicate well by email, but she's a million billion times better than anyone else. I was going to tell you the story about... I have to tell you a story about Simon Chapman, so I'll tell you how we met. My daughter, at her school in Linton, she was at the junior school in Linton, and their school had a Saturday book thing, and Simon Chapman was an author that came down, and he brought all these jungle books, and he gave the children and me, and I guess there must have been some other mums and dads there, but I didn't notice anything. He gave us all a talk about being a jungle explorer, and he showed us his hammock that he slept in, and his water bottles, and all this equipment that he took in the jungle. And he also talked about the animals and asked the children what different animals were when he showed the photographs. And it was great. And afterwards he was selling his books. I was really into it. I really liked it. I'd never heard of Bolivia really, or certainly never thought of going there. At the time, I'd been planning a trip on the Zambezi. That must have been public knowledge because I put it in my Google Maps. I'd been plotting a course along the Zambezi River, and I was planning to canoe it on my own. So I was really interested in his talking about boats and stuff. And I talked to him afterwards, and I told him about my trip. And I bought a copy of his book, The Monster of the Madidi. And we talked and exchanged numbers, I think, or email addresses. And I read his book, and I really enjoyed it. Especially enjoyed the first chapter, the opening chapter, where he describes himself in the shower, imagining that he's a tree frog in the rainforest with the rain pouring down. It's a really good piece of writing. The rest of the book's not actually up to much, but that introduction really grabbed me enough and got me through the whole book. But it's about trying to find this mysterious thing called Deloy's ape. And Deloy was a French explorer who went down there, and like explorers did in the 19th century, I guess he shot everything in sight, one of the things he shot was apparently a giant spider monkey type creature, the sort of Sasquatch of Bolivia. Spider monkeys are called Marimona. I talked to the people in San Jose about it afterwards, and they said that there were giant spider monkeys. They'd definitely seen them. And that may have been what Simon was looking for in that book. It's a good book. I'd recommend it to anyone. You're not wasting your money buying it. But so I was plotting I was planning my trip, and I don't know what happened. I don't know whether the accident happened before or after that, but I think towards the end of, maybe it was that towards the end of the year, a bit later, a few months later, a guy came past me at 90 miles an hour on the road from Cambridge to towards Linton. It's the road to Haverhill. It's a big A road. It's very dangerous, and there are some mountains called the Gog Magogs, and the road goes dual carriageway as it goes up this hill. And I was coming back. I was going from Cambridge back to Great Abington. Along that road, and somebody came past me at 90 miles an hour and almost clipped my handlebars, almost hit me at 90. So close. I've never ever heard or felt. It was just incredibly fast and incredibly close. And then he lost control of the car right in front of me, and he skidded left and right and left and right, and he did that overcorrection thing. You've got to consciously undercorrect, otherwise you get into an undamped oscillation, and that's what he did. And eventually he head-on with another car coming the other way, because this was right at the end of the dual carriageway bit. He was trying to get round just before it merged back into single carriageway. So there was no protecting barrier between the oncoming traffic and him by that point. So he whizzed past me, swerved, and then head-on with the woman and her daughter who were coming the other way. And this crash happened about 20 yards in front of me. Enormous fucking bang. And then just silence. And I cycled up on my bike, and there was just this filthy, foul smell of burning engine, of fluid pouring onto hot engines. Because when everything gets bust up in a car, all the fluids all leak out onto the hot engine, and you get this burning smell and smoke. And I just kind of went up, and nobody got out of the cars, and I just sort of went up and said, "Is everyone okay?" But the guy's car, actually the only car in the road was the woman and her daughter, because the guy had flipped the car, jumped right up and rolled over into the verge on the opposite side of the road. He was upside down, and then he got out of his car on his own, and I kind of helped this woman, and then waited for the police and everything, and they took statements and addresses and things, and waited for a tow truck to clear up the wreckage, because none of the cars were drivable, obviously. But it was a nightmare, fucking nightmare. The next morning I was cycling to work through Little Abington. I think it's called Little Abington, I don't know. It's the route I used to take was across the bridge in Great Abington, and then a left to not go on the main road, a left to go up the back via can't remember the name. Haverhill? No. The road to Great Chesterford, I think it is. So I was going anywhere. I was still in Abington, going down the road, and a guy comes up behind me in his car and skids, deliberately, I'm sure. Skids right behind me. And I flipped. I fucking jumped off my bike and I screamed at him, and I really wanted to kick his door in. I was fucking out of my mind. He came up right behind me and skidded. There was no reason to do that. There was no one else on the road. It was early in the morning. I was cycling along on my own. He comes up behind me and goes, "Arr!" like this, right near me, just to give me a fright. Fuck that bastard. Anyway, so then there was going to be a court case about this, because the guy who'd had the crash said it was my fault because I was cycling without lights. So I had this court appearance ahead of me, and I was supposed to be a witness. I don't know if I was a witness, but he accused me. I don't know how that worked. He said it was my fault. Don't know how that works. But he didn't win the case, and they fined him apparently and took his license away. But for months I was stressed and depressed about this, and it might have been during that time that Simon Chapman emailed me in January of 2008 and said, I'm going to Bolivia. My friend Julian can't come this time. He was going to, but he can't come. Do you want to come instead? And I sort of thought about it. I looked up Bolivia, and I was into mountains at the time, and I saw the mountains and thought about climbing, and then I think the same day or the next day, probably only a few hours later, I replied and said, yeah, okay, I'm interested. What should we do? And so we met up. I think I went to see him I took my daughter as well. Went to see him in where he lives. Forgotten the name. North of Manchester, west by the sea. Well, you know, one of those places. And we went up there and we went canoeing together and kind of got to know each other a little bit at the weekend. It was a really nice weekend. I think Helen enjoyed it too. We met Carolyn and his kids, and we went to his jungle room and looked at all his jungle stuff, and he showed me all his medical kit with all his out-of-date fucking medication, past the sell-by date, past the fucking use-by date, by years sometimes. But he had his maps on the wall and his posters and his book stuff, and that was obviously where he sat and wrote his books, I suppose. But he's like a kid. He's like a big kid. So we went canoeing in his canoe, and then later on he came down to Abington and we went canoeing again. And I guess this was coming up to the court case. I don't know, I was stressed as fuck. And we went canoeing. We canoed from Abington into Cambridge and then tried to get the bus back with his fold-up canoe on the bus. And the fucking bus just drove past the bus stop without stopping to ask if anybody wanted to get on. And I flipped at that. I made a bit of a scene at the bus stop. We ended up having to get a taxi. But it was because the bus really annoyed me. The bus was often doing that. It would go past without picking us up. And I was trying to live there without using a car. I was trying to do the right thing. And the fucking stagecoach who owned the local stagecoach used to be the bus I used to travel on from Aberdeen to London. And that company became very big. It used to just have a few buses that did this Aberdeen-London route. And then it became very big, and it somehow bought out the whole fucking bus, the whole local bus service for Cambridgeshire, or Cambridge South, or whatever it's called. And then, as far as I can tell, fucked everyone over, because the buses only came once an hour, and when you go past, you leave a guy and his daughter, they're trying to get to the swimming pool, you just leave them, you just go past and don't stop. You leave them shouting, hey, hey, wait! And there isn't another bus for an hour, so there's no swimming lesson that day. Really great. And all these little things happened that it just depressed me, because we were trying to make a world where we used less fuel and less resources and appreciated it more, and then I just saw what was happening, and it was all going against that. Everything I saw and everything I did at the computer lab, when I said like, why are we always buying the latest computers and giving them to research students, so research students get used to using computers with, at that time, 4 gigabytes of memory. In 2006, when I was complaining about this, that was a fucking unbelievable amount of RAM. Just unbelievable how you needed that. And there was this one standard ML compiler called, I can't remember what it's called, it's the only compiler. It's the only compiler that, hang on. No, this phone's still responding. It's the only, I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, it needed a minimum of 1 gigabyte of RAM to compile any tiny little ML program. What a load of fucking crap. A gigabyte. Because if you just supply the memory, you just supply the CPU cycles, then there's no motivation for people to write efficient code. There's no motivation for them to think about how they use storage to do the system right. No, you just carry on. You can just assume that the CPU, that we'll carry on throwing away our old computers and buying new ones. It was obvious that that was wrong. And I said on the mailing list, why do we have to use, why was Pete Brooks always buying the absolute latest fucking board with the hugest amount of memory he possibly could for all the students? I said, why do you do that? Why do we have to use this stuff? Why do we have to be early users of all these CPUs? Because it was also hard to get the software to work on them. We were ahead of the people, the computers that the people who wrote the Linux kernel were using, and we used to have to, I used to even have to patch the fucking kernel in order to be able to use the, oh Christ, what a fucking shit. They just laid it on me. And maybe it's because I spent a year at Schumacher College, and maybe it's because they suspected I was up to something. I wasn't up to anything. My life had been destroyed after that. I spent a year at Schumacher College. I got this natural step offer of a job. I was supposed to be a kind of secretary to this fucking cunt called I can't remember his name, it doesn't matter. This Tory bastard. Guy something. I was supposed to be his assistant. We were supposed to go to Sweden. We were supposed to meet the ABBA girl, the brunette. I was really looking forward to that. And we were supposed to start the natural step in England. And that was all killed. The guy took the money and then he told me, we're not going to Sweden, we're not doing that. And I stopped, that was the end of it. I lost touch with everyone from Schumacher College. I did that trip to South Africa and I saw Katie, and that was it. I never saw Cornelia again after that. It was all over as far as I was concerned. But I wonder if these cunts thought that they were still at war with me. I think that was the time that I went to Africa. That was the same time I went to Africa and and hitchhiked down and saw my grandparents while they were still alive. The last time I saw them together alive. And I saw Stan Wilson, the ex-CEO of, I'm pretty sure he was managing director or something of Burma Oil, living on his own after his wife had died. Sad old man on his estate. And I fished, but the fishing wasn't, I didn't ask him if I could fish off his land. I went to the other side, to Klamath, which is this island where Jake and Thea and their kids lived. They just lived in a rented house with their fucked old Chevy pickup. God, they've got some brilliant stories. Thea told me, Thea said, well, you're divorced now. Next time, make sure you marry the right woman. I thought, yes. Somebody knows. So it wasn't that trip. No, it could have been that trip, because the time Thea said that to me was when I went in 1999. I went and spent a few weeks with my parents, that's right. So I think it was that post-Schumacher trip. I did two things. Yeah, I went to Zimbabwe to try and set up the eco tourism farm tourism thing, and that didn't work. So I hitchhiked south and went to see my grandparents. And yeah, that's when I went fishing. And when I killed that fish that I shouldn't have killed, that skipjack. And so hang on. How the fuck did I get down there? Schumacher College, yeah. It was all over. Nothing worked. Nothing I tried worked. I'd written as well to Douglas Adams and that other guy that he wrote the book with, Last Chance to See, the co-author of that. He had some tourist business, and I wrote to him and I said, look, I'm trying to set this up. Do you want to be involved in some way? And he kind of wrote back and he said, yeah, good luck, and I can't really help with anything right now. All that stuff just disintegrated. And when it all fell apart, I was living with my parents, and after I threatened to punch my father, I didn't want to live there anymore, so I went to Cambridge. And I lived on the Dole, and I went during summer holidays because I knew that you could rent student rooms from Trinity College and places like that. They rented them out for cheap in the summer break. So I went and rented a room from Trinity. Can't remember the name of the street, that little pedestrian only street that goes down to I think it's called Christ's Pieces. It goes past you go past the gates of St. John's College, and then you take a right and you go down this street. That's where I wrote Kate the story about the mountain lion. And I read all this stuff about physics, and I was full of shit from reading fucking Roger Penrose's stupid fucking bullshit book, which I thought was great. And I guess I was still full of Twin Peaks, because after Satish invited me to go to Schumacher College, and I needed the money to pay half the bursary, I went up to Ponteland, and I was working during the day, and then I had evenings to myself, and I remember Twin Peaks was the major thing in my week. Fucking hell, that was good. It was just the early few episodes, and it was fucking brilliant. Just changed my whole world. Twin Peaks, and going to with her Down syndrome. She had a son. Ian and Jenny Brown were the people I stayed with in Ponteland. He's an architect, and they had a son with Down syndrome. And I rented a room in their house while I was working for Peter for a few months. And I used to go to this kind of special needs evening class thing, and I got to meet these autistic children and Down's children, and that was really amazing. There's this one autistic kid that just used to recite all the stations on the line from London to Edinburgh, one by one. He recited them all. He knew them all. I liked him. My kind of dude. Sweet kid though, but that's all he said. And I used to have to try and... I didn't see the real pattern in it, I guess, and I felt like a kind of jerk talking to him, because I just wasn't on his wavelength. I guess that's how people feel talking to me. Amanda, is that what it's like? This fucking weird asshole who talks shit about crap in his imagination that none of it is real, and he just carries on talking about it. He sees the pattern that no one else sees. It's fucking prototypical unions of countries to resolve disputed territories with Vladimir Putin and what's his name? Lukashenko. I think that's what they're doing with Belarus and the Russian Federation. They're trying to show that you can actually have a sane joint administration and an economy that works. So when you have disputed territories or things, you can resolve it that way. I'm sure they're that smart, easily. I'm enjoying this beer. Fuck. So all that was off. And Simon and I were doing this fucking stupid fucking... Tell you what, if you want to know what I'm talking about, try canoeing from Great Abington to Cambridge. Try it. Take any fucking boat you want and go to Great Abington, get in under the bridge that goes over the main road. The only bridge that was bombed during the Second World War was that bridge. So it has historical interest. Go there. Get in your boat under that bridge, canoe across the fields and down the river, and get in Little Chesterford and go down down the backs of all those beautiful houses in Chesterford. You probably go past all sorts of homes of historic people like Linus Pauling. There was this woman in fucking San Jose who had lived in Little Chesterford or somewhere and met Linus Pauling and knew all those people. I once went for an interview in Little Chesterford to a company called Alpha Metrics. This was when I was first trying to get a job in Cambridge when I lived in Aberdeen. I was driving down and this absolutely fucking drop-dead gorgeous woman who was like an angel for me. Can't remember her name. She worked for a company called Amanuensis. It was a recruitment company in Cambridge that did kind of high-tech recruitment. She had my CV and she used to set me up for these interviews, and I would drive down to Cambridge in my Volvo 244 and go to interviews. She set me up with all these interviews, and eventually I got a job with some fucking fly-by-night bullshit outfit run by a fucking Tory cunt called Dennis something or other. That's how I got to Cambridge. Aged 19, and my girlfriend dumped me when I arrived. That was just after Madonna's album came out. The one with Love Don't Live Here Anymore on it. I was living in a guest house on the corner of that street that's the bridge that goes over towards a big roundabout and then left down Chesterton Road, I think. There was a guest house on the corner. I lived in that. That's how I found out about the cheap houses from Trinity, because I lived in that for a few nights, and then I moved to the little road that leads down to the swimming pool from Fenner's Road or something. I think it's the road, also the road that goes to one of the entrances of Fenner's, the kind of entrance by Kelsey Carriage swimming pool. It's 22 minutes and the video is stopping. The video is slowing down. Let's stop it and start it again.